This is a program which is part of a much longer association which we've had with the Kazakh university colleagues and the ministry, and it is centred really on the realisation of the higher education reform process, which was started many years ago, and which my colleague David and I have had the great privilege of being associated with ever since. The idea of this particular part of the programme has been to identify those challenges and interesting areas of opportunity which have been apparent over the last few years, and to try and seek to collect evidence of good practice on some of the themes which have emerged. And these themes have included how Kazakh universities might advance research and innovation generally. The second would be how they can diversify their funding sources and therefore become very much engaged with the local region, nationally and internationally, and also become very entrepreneurial in the way in which they go about their business, but building on the very fine academic areas of excellence which they have got. The third theme, I think, which has been important is the overall financial sustainability of the institution, because this is something which is likely to be important as the government has indicated that universities should earn more money from their own efforts rather than just be dependent on government. And so in this sense, I think we're trying to figure out how the university can be very sustainable long term, particularly in terms of developing new academic programs, developing new research, and also ensuring that the capacity of the faculty members to develop these new activities is at the best international levels. And this inevitably leads us to the fourth theme, and the fourth theme is really concerned with how do we develop a strategy for new academic developments, what new programme titles might be available, what multidisciplinary programs might the universities think of devising, particularly in relation to those big global themes which tend to permeate the entire world higher education system at the present time. And the fifth point, I think, which is been important, is to help universities position themselves globally, help them to develop a very strong idea of where they want to be internationally, and to develop programs related to student mobility, both within and without Kazakhstan, to develop internationally recognized research and partnerships, and also in knowledge transfer as well. So the groups which we've met with in the last week have been very, very active in visiting 3 universities in this country, namely the University of Bath, University of Reading, and Cardiff Metropolitan University, which are different universities with different traditions, different heritage, different positions within the British system, but although they're different, they all offer huge perspectives of how some of these themes have been implemented in practice. So we've been trying to collect evidence of good practice, and also of course to try and figure out how that good practice could be translated back to Kazakhstan if indeed it was felt to be useful and relevant. Well, the second question is related to what seem to be some of the outstanding topics which have come out of our discussions this week, which need to be perhaps taken further and redefined in the context of Kazakhstan. There are many of these, but the ones which I think come particularly to my mind would be, first of all, the desirability of universities investigating the possibilities of establishing a relatively small number of themes for the work of the university. These themes would correspond to big international challenges like global sustainability, health and welfare, internationalization and various things like this. And so the universities which we've seen in the UK, from this point of view, have set up groups of sort of multidisciplinary teams to work on these, both in terms of research, in terms of the creation of new postgraduate programs and undergraduate programs as well, because these new areas, I think, are very, very internationally accepted and recognized, and will make it much easier for Kazakh universities to seek partnerships with other universities from other countries. So that's the first thing, I think, the creation of multidisciplinary themes which address big societal problems in Kazakhstan and globally as well. The second thing which has come out is the desirability of Kazakh universities developing very strategic partnerships with other universities, not only in Kazakhstan, but in other countries of the world with which Kazakhstan wishes to develop close relationships. And it's not for me to say which countries those should be, but what we have done is to examine issues like the scope of such partnerships, how they put together, the different levels of cooperation which will exist within partnerships, how the partnerships would be organized and financed, and so on. And in particular, I think, how partnerships can increase the capacity of the institution to do what it wants to do, but in with a much greater range of intellectual expertise at its disposal. The third thing, I think, which has come out has been really the necessity of the university being clear about what its particular strategic vision is and how that vision can be expressed in plans which are, on the one hand, relatively broad, but on the other hand do contain mechanisms by which those plans are actually going to be fulfilled. And this is, I think, probably somewhat a little bit different from the strategic planning which has been used so far. Not incompatible with it, but it may need to be refined just a little bit in that way. And the fourth big theme, I think, which we have been dealing with is the question of how these things, how these themes which we've been talking about can be best realized within the Kazakhstan higher education system. And this has meant looking at the balance between institutional autonomy and freedom on the one hand, and public accountability and the right of government to determine policy on the other. And one of the things I think we've been trying to figure out, as been the case in the British universities, is that universities do need quite a lot of autonomy in a number of domains to be able to properly respond to the challenges and opportunities which we've got, and to therefore be creative in terms of developing responses. So there's probably a debate to be had in Kazakhstan on the nature of whether the autonomy which institutions have got at the moment is enough in terms of the academic domain, in terms of personnel, in terms of finance, and of course the legal status of the institution itself. And we hope that some of the evidence we've collected will give some very good instances as to how this can be further developed. Which is not to say, of course, this is the fourth point, I think that as far as the ministry is concerned, it clearly has a great deal of possibilities in means of assisting the institutions to further the ambitions which everybody, I think, would agree with. And we have collected a lot of evidence here in terms of how the British and the Welsh governments have created funding streams and supportive mechanisms in order to bring, for example, business and universities together, and funds to develop research excellence in universities, funds to develop knowledge exchange excellence in universities, and funds to develop teaching excellence as well. So we would hope that the ministry would very seriously have a look at these practices which have evolved in the UK, and see to what extent these are can be readily transplanted to the Kazakhstan scene. And the final point, I think, which we would want to say is that there is, of course, a balance in between accountability on the one hand and support and autonomy on the other. And the role of boards of universities will be increasingly important in being a bridge between society on the one hand and the institutions on the other. So the groups which we've been working with in the UK have done a wonderful job in collecting a great deal of complex evidence, have done a great job in distilling this and synthesizing a number of very, very important and relevant recommendations, both at the ministry level and also at the institution level as well. And as far as my colleagues and I are concerned here, we are fully confident that the universities and the ministry will be able to make great strides as a result of our work together during this week. Thank you.